Jay Sri Radhe, Jai Nitai, Jai Gaur, Jai Mahavira Radharaman. Welcome to all of you to Gaura Sangha. In this interesting episode, we speak with Jagadananda Das about the importance of Dharma. What is Adharma and what is Paradharma? For all of you who are studying the Gaudiya Vaishnavism and going deeper into the Rasic philosophy as well, Dharma is for this material world, and we should do in order to keep this holy creation of Bhagavan in order. And Paradharma is the path to the Nitya Lila. As always, do the right thing. If you like this video on the topic, give like, comment and subscribe. Thanks for watching.
Yes, well, I would say that it's it's a tricky little topic there, because if you look at the Bhagavatam, and if you look at even the Gita, the Gita ends with Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. So the idea of taking shelter, this is Sharanapatti, or the Sharanagati. The Sharanagati is the essence of the whole bhakti process. Like if you even look at Bhakti Sandarbha, or if you look at the Ramanuja Sampradaya, how much importance they give to that idea of surrendering, of giving yourself up to Krishna and allowing Krishna to act through you. So that's considered to be the essence of all Dharma, and that's what the Bhagavatam is also saying. So the Bhagavatam, right away it starts with, it really starts very heavy in the very beginning, from the second verse. Dharma projita kaitavo traparamo nirmatsaranam satam vedyam vastavam atra vastu shivadam tapatrayon mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni kim va paray ishvaraha Sadyo hridya varudhyate kriti bhikshu tad kshanat. So this is at the very beginning, the statement that it's this is Dharma projita kaitavo traparamo. That this is the pure Dharma of the living entity. This is the pure goal of the living being, is to have devotion, to have Krishna held in his heart, right? Ishvara sadyo hridya varudhyate, that you have Krishna held in your heart. So all the rest of it, that's why throughout the Bhagavatam, the concept is that if you don't have bhakti, that whatever else you do is all pretty much a waste of time. And that's being shown even in this verse here, the first verse. But it's not the only place, because you have again in the second chapter, Savai Pungsang Paradharma Yato Bhakti Radhokshaje Ahaituki Apratihata Yayatma Suprasidati. So for the full satisfaction of the soul, you have to be free from the Deha Dharma. And then again in the fifth chapter there, you have Narada Muni's instructions to Vyasadeva, telling him that Tyaktva swadharmang charanam bhujang harer bhajan apakota patet tato yadi tatrakva bhadram abhut amushyakim ko vartha apto bhajatam swadharmata. So there he's saying that even if you give up your swadharma, even if you give up your regulated duty for the sake of renouncing everything to just simply serve Krishna alone, that there's no loss. Whereas if you perform your swadharma perfectly, but you don't have bhakti, then what have you gained exactly in terms of the salvation of your eternal soul? So the real liberation comes from becoming one with Brahman, from becoming united with Krishna in eternal love. Everything else is a shadow of that. So the idea there is that if you're going to go if you're going to take the Bhagavatam seriously, follow the Bhagavatam. So everything that happens after the Bhagavatam, everything that happens in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Raganuga Bhakti, all these things, it's all based on the premise that bhakti supersedes everything else. that if you have that, if it's bhakti, then it's real, and if it's not bhakti, then it's all just connected to the material body. And if it's connected to the body, then it's a deception. It's kaitava. And that kaitava, where of course the famous text by the commentary by Sridhar is often quoted, that the projita is pra-ujjita, that extra syllable there at the beginning means that even the desire for liberation is being considered a deception. It's being considered cheating religion.
Mm-hmm.
So that even that. So the dharma that we talk about, when we talk about dharma, for instance, you say, okay, you have to be in the sattva guna. Right? Your dharma is basically your situation within the three gunas. Right? So if you're a particularly tamasic person, you have a particular kind of occupation. If you're a particularly rajasic person, you'll probably be engaged in a particular type of occupation. If you have a sattva guna, then you're probably engaged in a particular type of occupation. But when it comes to bhakti, then although you can engage in bhakti from anywhere within the three gunas, you can be in the tamo guna, and you can tell someone's chanting Hare Krishna but he's in tamo guna, or someone's chanting Hare Krishna but he's in rajo guna. So the Bhagavatam talks about that as well in the 3rd canto, 29th chapter, where you see that there's bhakti in the rajo guna, bhakti in sattva guna, bhakti in tamo guna. So you want bhakti that is nirguna. That's the goal. So how can you get to so nirguna bhakti? Where's nirguna bhakti? Well, the nirguna bhakti might still have the person might still externally have the characteristics of the gunas, but he's actually free from the gunas. Right? So that's why in the 3rd canto there, when it talks about ato bata shwapacho to garihan, yes jivagre vartate namatu bhyam te pustapaste. Sasnurarya. He's done all the person who's chanting Hare Krishna, doesn't matter what his caste is. He becomes qualified to perform the Vedic sacrifice, it says. In other words, he's as good as a Brahmin. So therefore that verse is being used as a proof that your prarabdha karma is destroyed by bhakti, so that anything that the external gunas do not restrict the experience of bhakti, that the bhakti can come up out of it anyway. So to summarize, generally speaking, the bhakti path and the swadharma path are not exactly parallel. They're not exactly. It's not that by performing your dharma one day you'll get to the paradharma. It's not that by performing your prescribed duty that you become qualified to become a Vaishnava. But if you are a Vaishnava, then what's your relationship to dharma? Well, that depends on your adhikar. So now that's going to come up. You're going to say, okay, now I'm going to be a sannyasi and I'm going to do nothing but chant Hare Krishna.
Just one second.
Yes, go ahead.
You mentioned 1 minute ago to chant the Hare Krishna. In this case, do you mean that the Shastra is speaking about the Harinam, or is openly saying, literally saying Maha Mantra Hare Krishna, or is it speaking about Harinam?
No, it says Nam, it says Harinam. It doesn't say the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. The Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is nowhere in the Bhagavatam.
Yes.
It's nowhere in the Bhagavad Gita. It's nowhere. It's in this Kali Santarana Upanishad, which who knows when the heck that became into writing.
Right. Because just to explain this my mind on this, because many times when we read Harinam, we take by grant that is Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, but Harinam indeed can be any way of mantra or prayer with the names of Hari.
Any name of Hari.
Right. So in this way, it's not Hare Krishna.
Sanketam, the Bhagavatam says clearly, you can say like Narayan, that Ajamil called the name of Narayan. And so the names, so many names.
Yes.
Like Mahaprabhu says, You have so many names. Nam Namakari Bahudha Nija Sarvashakti Tatrapita Niyamita Smaranena Kalaha Itadishitava Kripa Bhagavan Mamapi Dudaivam Idrishami Hajni Nanuraga. So I have no attachment. So he doesn't say there any particular Nam Namakari Bahuda. You made many names.
Yes.
So the names, of course, the names have significance. Because if I say Ram or if I say Krishna, it also means the way you're thinking. How are you? What are you when you chant the name? What's your bhav? What are you thinking? Shyama. Hey Shyam. Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam, Shyam Shyam, Radhe Radhe. Radhe Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Radhe. You can be chanting any name, and you can Hare Krishna can have so many different interpretations. Or you can chant Hare Ram first.
Yes, some do.
I know. I mean, I was just actually reading that that this was that Prangopal Goswami. So Prangopal Goswami, you know the name Prangopal Goswami?
Prangopal, yes, of course.
Yeah, Prangopal Goswami. He's Pran Krishna Babaji's guru.
Yes.
Right, in Radhakund. Anyway, Prangopal Goswami, he died in like 1940 something. So anyway, Prangopal Goswami, he was in the early 20th century. He was the one who argued for the Hare Krishna Mahamantra being chanted without counting and do it in any circumstance. And he was the one. So he faced the debate with people from the line of Radharaman Charandas Babaji. And he was the one who actually won the debate in terms of the judgment that was given by people in Navadvip and Vrindavan. But at any rate, whether that's true or not, I mean, that's the way that Nitya Gopal, he presents it like that. I used to know all these things. The late 19th century, early 20th century, this was a big time for debates in Gaudiya Vaishnavism because there were so many books were just coming out. They were being discovered. Like previously, a person might know Chaitanya Charitamrita and might know Prem Bhakti Chandrika or Prarthana, and this would be all the books that they would know. For an ordinary Bengali Vaishnava, Prem Bhakti Chandrika, Prarthana, and Chaitanya Charitamrita, maybe Chaitanya Bhagavat, like that. A few books in Bengali. So it's only then in the 19th century all these books started coming to the surface, and many books that had never been seen before. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was part of that, but also at Padmari in Brahanagar, they also big collection of manuscripts and big collection of books. So in the 19th century they started just collecting all these manuscripts and compiling them and putting them in libraries. And so finally, researchers were able to have a better idea. And even now, now we're lucky. In many ways, we have more of the history of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. A lot of the time, it's not very clear even what was going on, because you have the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing. That some people are thinking like this, some people know like that, and so which of the stories is the true version? Yeah. It's very difficult to tell sometimes, and so you get very strong opinions.
One question here, in relation to in Radhakund, I hear something that I cannot prove because I need to go to the Bengali books or stories or biographies or something like this, and because of language I cannot get there. But is any true that was smoking cigarettes? I hear more than once in Radhakund about this. They say to me, "Do you know?"
Well, I mean, I don't know. I really have no idea. I mean, I never saw a picture of him with a cigarette.
No, me neither.
But I mean, some people wasn't considered to be quite as horrible, especially for a Grihastha Vaishnava, because they say this thing about Bipin Bihari Goswami that he smoked a hookah, and that this was one of the reasons why Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati lost faith in him. Well, I mean, all these things, I don't know. I mean, I was quite, when I left ISKCON, and I met so many Vaishnavas who smoked cigarettes and smoked bidis. And I kind of stopped taking it seriously. I mean, I thought if someone is smoking cigarettes and chanting the Hare Krishna, what's more important? Does he get no benefit from chanting if he smokes a cigarette? I didn't think that was particularly a particularly good argument. I didn't see it. So then, but I mean, that was the rule that was established, and we come, the more and more we, accept that is and was the standard. But it wasn't necessarily the standard in the Vaishnava community. That kind of, hard discipline of ascetic discipline. And not that you want to smoke cigarettes. I mean, it's not good for you, but spiritually speaking, I think that its negative effects are minor. I would think if you're a scholar like Prangopal Goswami was, and we're doing the Sandarbhas. I use Prangopal Goswami's commentary regularly, his translation. And I noticed that the other translations that are there, like Shamlal Hakim and Haridas Shastri, they almost follow 100% Prangopal Goswami. Now, you mean Prangopal Goswami in the Vaishnava world in the 1920s and 1930s? He was the unquestioned authority. People go to if you have a good speaker. If you have a good speaker, like who comes, there's a good speaker now in Vrindavan. He's called Goradas Babaji. No, he's not. I don't think he's a Babaji even. I think he's a householder. But he gives Bhagavad Path and often does Bhaktimal Path and does Bhagavad Path, and especially Bhaktimal he does a lot. But he's from from Ramdas Babaji's line. I think I spoke to him. He's from Rajani Das, Rajani in Govinda Kund. I think that's where he's from. That's where he's initiated. Mm. My point is just that that people will go, for instance, Vaishnavas from the Gaudiya Sampradaya. They listen quite regularly to Rajendra Das or to even Premananda now. Premananda is becoming quite popular, but even with Gaudiya Vaishnavas, because he speaks so directly, usually on Radha Mahima, talking about Radha Rasa Sudhanidhi. So there's, even to talk about such subjects, to find someone who is not only willing but capable, someone like Anantadas. These people are very rare, Yeah. Even Anantadas's best disciples, they're still very, very far away from where he was in terms of being able to talk about Vilap Kusumanjali and to talk about Radha Rasa Sudhanidhi or any of these other Leela Granthas.
His commentaries were incredible, really, full of rest.
Oh, yeah. Well, he was an amazing. Yeah. So there's nobody in the in your sampradaya. There's nobody who's going to refuse. I mean, they went regularly to listen to Anantadas, even though Anantadas might have been favorable to the chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But sometimes I know that the thing it becomes a matter of tension. It's a bit silly, but at any rate, it's hard to avoid these things that you always have disagreements between different groups. Yeah. It's hard to find it. It's hard to create an institution where everybody's agreeing with each other.
Yeah.
Well, as long as you can be peaceful. I mean, there's no reason to make a Vaishnava aparat for Siddhanta differences. The real problem is when people are deliberately cheating and have no real faith, and they just playing games with their disciples.
Yeah, that is something else. But there is also when you can see where is the line of Dharma, and when the Dharma is not there, then there is problem. And I think this is an interesting point that you are speaking right now, because this is what we have to see and also to follow ourselves in order to be able to identify when the things are going wrong. So,
well, look, yeah. Well, look, I would say that, yes, I mean, even if you take, all right, so in a way that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was quite astute. He talked about Daiva Varnashram. Mm-hmm. So Daiva Varnashram, basically what the idea is that you have it really comes down to the same thing, as regular varnashram dharma, but it's just simply that that's to externally keep you, let's say, on the right path. Because if you engage in sinful activity deliberately, that's a nama parad. Right? So if you're doing, like nam, what is it? Namni baladyasya papa buddhi. That nam no baladyasya hi papa buddhi. He'll not, a person who thinks that, who engages in sinful activities because he thinks that Harinam will save him.
Right.
But if you do like that, so that appears to contradict. You still have, if you just mean by dharma, one has to lead a moral life, right? So the whole dharma varnashram system, the idea of dharma that's in there, it's about leading a moral life. So a man should not take many wives, for instance, or if he shouldn't. He should take care of his children. If he's married and has children, can you just abandon that when it becomes difficult? Well, it says quite clearly in the Bhagavatam that it says that tavat karmani kurvita na nirvidyeta yavata matkatha sravanadova yavat najayate. So until you have real genuine faith in the holy name, you shouldn't renounce your swadharma. So so the thing about the idea really comes down to about renunciation, that you're going to become a renouncer, that you're going to go to the woods and do what like what Prahlad told Hiranyakashipu. I think that this is the highest dharma, to leave aside all this material business and just simply go to the forest and take shelter of Krishna, and that's what you should really do. That's exactly the opposite of what happens in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Because Arjuna wants to leave. He wants to go to the forest and meditate and chant japa or whatever. And Krishna is telling him not to do it. And why does he tell him not to do it? Because he doesn't have the adhikar. And what is the adhikar? The adhikar is actually faith. So now you're thinking, so let's say the verse from Narada's instruction, if you fail, it says, even if you fail, it's better than the best that you can possibly expect from your swadharma. So it's not the swadharma in itself, right? See, but then you have a mixed thing, because you're engaged in your swadharma, but internally or accompanying that, you have your paradharma, you have your internal dharma, you have your jiva swarupa Krishna Nityadas. So you do the two things in parallel ways. So that's also stated by Jiva Goswami and Bhakti Sandarbha, that you can have mixed Raganuga and Vaidhi Bhakti. So Varnashram Dharma falls into the category of Vaidhi Bhakti. You know this, right? Yeah. It's in the 64 dharmas, so it's part of it. So it's not that because it says Nanya Tato Shakaranam Varnashrama Acharavata. Purushena Pumach Puman. Right? It says that a person, by performing his Varnashram Dharma, he pleases Krishna. He pleases the Supreme Person. And in actual fact, there's no other way to please him. This is in the 11th canto, this verse. Right? So it's not, and it's quoted in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu also. So just by doing your Swadharma, but you're doing it in consciousness that you're doing it for the pleasure of Krishna, then it becomes Paradharma. It becomes a part of your culture. So Paradharma, it's Paradharma that's divided into into Raganuga and Vaidhi. Vaidhi is also Paradharma. Vaidhi Bhakti is also the Paradharma. That's why it's Savaipung Sang Parodharmo Yato Bhakti Radhokshaji. He says that there, it says that the Parama Dharma is that by which you get Bhakti. So it doesn't say that the Parodharma is Bhakti. It says the Parodharma, the Dharma. So Dharma in that case means a means to an end, like a sadhana. So Dharma has a bit of a different meanings. You can sometimes use it depending which way you mean it, right? So Dharma in this case, when he says Savai Pung Sang Paro Dharma Yato Bhakti Radhokshadet Ahaituki Pratihataya Atma Suprasidati. So Bhakti is what is Ahaituki. Bhakti is avyavahita. This is the attainment from your dharma. So the paradharma, this means the dharma means what do you do now? You're a conditioned soul. So what do you do now? The question is, what must I do in order to be saved? So what should you do? So you surrender, sharanagati. And then from sharanagati, 64 principles. But the 64 basic activities include a lot of stuff that doesn't sound like bhakti. Giving up sense gratification for the sake of Krishna, that's also bhakti. There's a lot of different things in those 64 activities that we don't necessarily think about, but that includes your moral, your ethical life. You don't cheat another devotee. You're not going to kill another devotee. You don't want to commit Vaishnava Parad by borrowing money from a Vaishnava and never paying back, right? Or like so many stories you hear, this devotee borrowed my car and never gave it back. You hear stories like this all the time.
I know many. I don't even know Karmis. He was from Ishkon, a good friend. I don't know Karmis who can be so rough than what some devotees can really do. There is one Spanish
Hard-hearted, wicked.
blog. It's called Tambor Rugiente, the screaming drum, that some devotees from Latin America have been writing a story from from the temples and everything. And there are some stories that are really mind-blowing. Like you can make a Netflix show with things.
Yeah, well, I know. I mean, I've been around for a long time. There's enough of them from the first 10 years of ISKCON. What to speak of now that ISKCON is 50 years, so we have plenty of stories to tell. But of course, that's the thing, that hopefully that there will be some devotees who are mature enough and who are capable. But the problem is that you get a lot of people who have no religious background, no spiritual background, who often were leading very tamasic and rajasic lives. And then they came to bhakti. And so, whatever bhakti that they have with them, obviously some grace is going to be given to them. But in this lifetime, the sunshine of their bhakti is covered with many clouds. So, it's not good for the movement, let's say. It's not good for the devotees. But this is in one way why I think it's good that there are people like you and others also who are delving into trying to get deeper into the matter, and trying to look into Gaudiya Vaishnavism. We have so much more information, just like I was saying a minute ago. We have so much more information now than we had 100 years ago or 150 years ago.
Sure.
In terms of, and so now that makes it more difficult because you get more intellectual differences, right? More opportunities to find contradictions, more opportunity to find trouble, and when we find trouble, then we lose faith. Well, how can I have faith when the Bhagavatam says this, the Gita says that, Chaitanya Charitamrita says something different, and my guru is saying something different again.
Yes.
So you're going to have this kind of thing going on. But from the point of view of a historian, so if you're a historian, for many years I've been interested in history of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So when you're interested in the history, then there's, how can you? I mean, just think how many people there are right now, even in the town where you're living, right? Mm-hmm. And every individual has his own story.
Yes.
So, when you have so many stories, hundreds of years, thousands of years of the history of Hinduism and Vaishnavism and then Gaudiya Vaishnavism, every single generation has something that is newly invented, and we try to avoid everybody saying, no, we don't invent, but in every sampradaya we see something new.
That's true. and they claim that it's like real, that is true. And it's
well, I mean, just take for instance, this is one of the reasons actually when I first left ISKCON. I mean, it was that we had this idea, and I mean, maybe it's not so clear anymore, but or I don't know, but we had the idea that this was something that was unchanged for thousands of years. That something that was, this was a revelation, and these truths were, in the Vedas. So, and then you go and you look at the Veda and you never see anything about Krishna. You look in the Upanishads and you see only when this Devaki Nandan is being spoken about there in Brihadaranyaka, with nothing at all, to give us any more information. So it's very difficult to, so it becomes a question. Well, then you have to say, well, does history does have an influence on the way things change in society and the way things change. Like if you think that religion doesn't change, well, that's ridiculous. Religion is constantly changing. And then you try to, and then and then of course, because if you're in our world today, you have to be, you have to look for the reasons. You have to try to find why did something happen. Why did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu come? Why did Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati? Why did they teach like this? What was the importance of this? What were the social conditions? What were the psychological conditions? What were the historical conditions? Right? The British were there. What was the influence of the British? What was the influence of Islam?
Yeah, it is a big one, by the way. I was just thinking about this when you were mentioned how religion is changing all the time, and it's not like it's just like a stone that is have been always like this. It's always evolving, changing, and somehow I was thinking on the all ancient temples in India and art where they show, for example, the way that they were dressing. Nowadays, we see the Indian women using the sari and everything, cover the toes, the shoulders, breast, everything is covered. And because it's a respect, because of the men looking at their whatever explanation is there. But if you see the ancient art in India and the carvings and the stones 1,000 years ago, those temples are showing how women was really dressing back in time, and it was a total different. There were no saris, it was like all like a very sexy, to say, very natural way of dressing, very light clothes.
Yeah, well, we don't really know. I mean, even those, if that was representing the way that actually people were dressing, I don't know. I mean, it could have been stylized, just like nowadays when you look at a film, let's say representing the Mahabharata or Ramayana, then it's it's an idea that's been created in the imaginations, really, of the filmmakers,
Right.
and its connection to the actual way people ever dressed at any one time in history. I would say that there may be some connection, but not an absolute. We can't make an absolute judgment, I would say.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's true. I mean, whether women in Bengal, for instance, the women they did go bare-breasted, but they would cover them. They would cover their breasts with a kind of chadar or with the sari, but they didn't wear a choli. So this was quite common in the villages, But I'm not saying that in the king's palace that the women were not dressed in a more modest way. But it's true that it's felt that some Puritanism came into the subcontinent. For instance, Parda women being in the harem and being behind the Parda. You know the word Parda? The Parda means the curtain. So women in Muslim society, women are kept behind the curtain, so you don't. So now, if you go to an Indian house, for instance, most of the time, if it's a fairly reasonably sized house, that the women will stay in the inside, the antakpuram. So you go, so if you think of a square, right? So the front door is one part of the building, and you come into that room. That's the outdoor room. That's where the male of the household. That's where he'll greet the guests, and then you go through that room and you go into the inner courtyard. There's an inner courtyard, and then in the inner courtyard there'll be the kitchen, and there'll be there'll be the bathrooms, and there'll be the other quarters, and whatever else is there. So mostly, if you're a guest, you never go into that second part. You only stay. You're only in that outer chamber, and you're there. You have your like your business, like it's like a living room or something like that. But that's where you have the where the guests are allowed. And if there's a feast, then you go into the inner the food is usually served in the inner quadrangle. People are sitting around there, but otherwise you don't see the women. You rarely see the women. You might say. So to what extent that kind of thing was existing even in the olden times, even in pre-Islamic times, something like that, but maybe not quite as severe.
Getting back to the topic of Dharma in the present Gaudiya Vaishnavism and all the different sects, one line is quite clear, is when the disciples, and in connection with their gurus, and of course Shastra, they are following the path that is given, for example, by Sanatana Goswami, Hari Bhakti Vilas. All the information is given how to follow. Of course, there are some things that are a little bit too hardcore to say for nowadays times, mainly for Western devotees, but there are some small details also that is possible that we can do, like the ekadasis, for example, the gambling or abuse of drugs or stuff like this that have been part of the culture. But I have seen, like, for many Western devotees, I'm not talking exactly about Gaudiya Vaishnavism or Vaishnavism at all, but for many Western, looks like the spiritual leaders, and I'm speaking in a very broad way, the spiritual leaders seems to hide about this kind of information, maybe because of feeling fear of losing, like, the audience, that the Western will not be able to manage, like, boats of purity, for example, cleanness, and to not, just to say, for example, to not drink alcohol, basic stuff. That why this part of how to behave is kind of hidden in some areas, and more looks like everybody is speaking about everything else. And in Vaishnavism, many times about the Radharani and the Ras and the Bhav and Mahabhav, but not saying that, okay, but let's start by controlling our mind, our senses first, and then we can enter to these topics.
Well, I have a mixed opinion about this, because I'm obviously one of the people who is at fault here, probably caused more trouble than I've prevented. Because if you're going to, if this has been taught to us as being the highest thing, then naturally, for a person who is enthusiastic to get to the bottom of things, he's going to strive. When Rupa and Raghunath are cast as the highest thing, and you have Bhaktira Samrita Sindhu and Ujjvala Nilamani, and then you have Vidagdha Madhava and Lalita Madhava, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita glorifies all these things so much. Then you have Govinda Lilamrita, and so all these things are being given so much importance in the Sampradaya itself. And so now you see someone like Siddhanta Saraswati, who is kind of putting the brakes on that. Right? He's saying, well, hang on, folks. He's more or less taking the same position that you are. He's saying that that this is not desirable, because it's anadhikar charcha. This is the word. You know this expression?
Mm-hmm.
You heard this word? Anadhikar charcha. Right? So anadhikar means that charcha means something that you're talking about, something for which you have no qualifications. So if you think that you have some qualification to understand this, well, you only have it's only a superficial attraction that you realize what you have.
Yeah.
Right? So nivrittata, this verse in the 10th canto, right at the beginning. So nivrittata shai rupagiya manat. And baboshadat srota manobhiramat. Kautama shloka gunanavada. Puman nivrita vinapushugnat. So the idea is that it's charming that even that the Hari that speak that here this for people who are completely renounced from the material world, hearing about Radha and Krishna is pleasing, right? It's they get joy from that, but it's pleasing even to an ordinary materialistic person because it's the story of a hero and his and of love.
Mhm.
So there's a pleasure to be had for it, even if you're not a devotee. And then for those who are in the middle, they know that hearing about this katha will free you from attachment to the material world.
Mhm.
And also at the end of the Rasa Lila, right? Vikriritang vrajavadhu biridang cha Vishnu. They're saying that it'll cure you of the material disease. So the point is, like, can a person who is sinful and is engaged in devotional activity and hearing about Radha and Krishna, is he in a better position than someone who is, following his regular life and taking care of his responsibilities, bringing up children as good human beings, and taking care of his wife and so on, but has no devotion to Krishna? Who gets further more quickly is
The one who is focused on Krishna.
Well, hopefully, the idea is that his sins will be removed, right? That his tendency, because it's hridrogam ashwapa hinotya chirena dira.
But there, back
The disease of the heart.
there is the thing of course, there is no qualification really to get the kripa of knowing about Radha and Krishna. There is nothing that you can do for paying this. It's not like a yoga siddhi that you develop and you start seeing things. But there is one thing of honesty, and also is a part of Nama Aparat, the ones that I do service or chant Harinam to say, in order to remove my sins, but I keep doing the same sins. So this is what I am talking about.
Yeah, well, this is, of course, I agree with you. I mean, but the fact is that, sometimes it takes a long time. It takes more time. I was just actually reading this because I was actually just simply reading this because I was looking at, I started looking at I just came into the Bhagavatam here and I was reading through in the first canto, reading the commentary to the second verse. Right, so the second verse there, that's the Dharma Projita verse.
Mm-hmm.
So in the Dharma Projita verse, just let me see if I can find it here. Nyamatsaranang Satam, or is it the Dharma Projita? Where am I? This is a very, very long commentary. That's why it's taking a minute here. Oh, that's Mother's and Sarvashakti Nibritta. Hang on. Here we go. Yeah, so it's just interesting the way that verse in the second line, it says Kim va parair ishvaraha sadyo hridya varudyate takriti bhikshu sushuvistatchana. Can I show a screen? Can I share a screen?
Yes, of course.
Okay, just let me get it here. This is a very long commentary. I'm scrolling through pages and pages and pages here. What are they doing there? Okay, let me just see. There we go. Yeah, I can show. How can I change it? How can I show on the screen?
Down
Okay.
are the icons, and then is one icon like a box with the arrow pointing up.
Okay. A square with an arrow?
Yeah. It's
okay, now what do I do?
Action, and then is right hand.
Okay, share. Oh, I see here. It doesn't have the screen that's open. Select the tab to share. No, Chrome tab, window. Okay, I found. Here we go. Okay, you can see? 112.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so here you see that Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim Va Parair Ishvaraha Sadyo Hridya Varudyate Takriti Bishushushvistatkshana. So there's some little things that they point out, right? So take away all this part, just starting from Kim Va. So Kim Va gives us that he says Kim Va Parair, just this part here. That means what's the use of any other scripture? besides the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Mm-hmm.
Now here it says Ishwaraha Sadhyaha. So there we have this Sadhyaha, which means immediately. And Tatkshanat also means immediately. So he's saying that Sadhyaha means quickly and Tatkshanat means immediately, in that very moment.
Uh-huh.
Right? So these two words, they appear to be somewhat either redundant, they're saying the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
or are they saying something different? Well, there's this word va here.
Uh-huh.
So va, the commentators are saying, well, it means either quickly or right away. Right? So anybody who is, so the thing is that you have kriti bihi, shushushu bihi. So kriti bihi, so these two kinds of people. But what they do is they put a comma here. All right. So for regular people who are just good people, right?
Mhm.
Kritis. So kriti means sukriti, person who is, pious, sattvigun. So he says that such a person, by reading the Bhagavatam, he will be able to hold Krishna in his heart, right? But those who really want to hear, so shushrushabhi means those who really want to hear the Bhagavatam, who are intent, who are concentrated, they will get the benefit right away. Krishna will come into their hearts right away and change them right away. So the point is, again, it's the same thing. The idea is that Shushrushabhi indicates that he has some kind of a devotional mood, right?
Yeah.
And Kriti B just means that he's, externally, let's say he's pure in his behavior. He's a good Brahmin or whatever. Right? So the difference is, so that's the difference that they're making here. That the commentaries, this is in all the commentaries, but especially, let's say, Jiva Goswami, but it's in the others as well.
Interesting.
So I mean, obviously, if you're going to be, like it was we always used to say in the when at the beginning when I first left, right? Because I'm not nearly as intense or as intent as I was when I was younger, right? When you're younger, you tend to be a little bit more fanatic. But there it was in the first chapter of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. There's one of the qualities of bhakti is sudurlava. You heard this? So there's sulabha, sudurlava. So it seems to be contradictory qualities of bhakti. So sulabha means it's very easy. But what's the very easy? It was just like you were just saying. You don't have to have any qualification to get the mercy of hearing that Radha and Krishna are to hear about them, to hear about their form, and to hear something about their lila. But then in order but that's just the, on the external part, that's the sulabha part, the easy to get. But then you have sudurlava. And sudurlava, it's not just durlava, it's sudurlava. Right? It's extremely hard to get to really get it properly. Right? So that's given two definitions in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Why is it sudurlava? So the first definition is that sadhanoghaya anasanghai aprapya suchiradapi. The sadhanoghai anasanghai. So this word anasanga is the one that's given so much importance. Asanga, so asanga really means asakti, it means attachment. So anasanga, without attachment. So if you engage in devotional practices, but you have no attachment, so what does that mean, the attachment? That somehow your mind has to be present also. It's not that you're just doing the physical activity of devotion. So it's only when it's asanga or asakti yukta bhakti. That's when you can, you have to go all the way to asakti before you get to bhav, right? Ruchi, asakti, bhav. So if you don't have asakti, then how can you get bhav? This is the point he's saying. So you have to learn. So bhava is something that is descends. Right? Bhava is something that descends. It comes from it's Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma. Right? That's bhava. Suddha Sattva Visheshatma. It's not part of the material world. But asakti, even if you're engaged in anasanga bhakti, it's like you're there, you're present, but you're not getting the full benefit of it. So it doesn't have a full effect on transforming you. But if you have that asakti yukta bhakti, right? Because the second thing is that it says the second reason that is that Krishna doesn't give it very easily, so he's withholding it. So he's saying, okay, why should I give? I like to give bhakti, I'd like to give it to this person, but I just don't know. Not really. Make him work for it a little more. Make him suffer a little bit more. Just like the gopis have to suffer in the Ras Leela. So who is more exalted? The gopis are there, they're dancing, they come right to Krishna in person. But Krishna is turning them away and why? Yatadhano labda dhane vinashte tachintayanyat nibrito naveda. It's like a poor person who gets money. He wins the lottery. Yeah, he wins the lottery. So I've seen films, there have been stories like this. He wins the lottery and then he puts it in a special place so that he can go and cash it in. Then when he goes to look for it, he realizes that it's been lost. And so there he had the cash prize of $64 million or whatever. And now he suddenly lost his ticket. So imagine how he could never think about anything else. For the rest of his life, he's not going to think about anything else. He'll be sitting in the bar getting drunk, and anybody who comes in will tell, I had $64 million and I lost it. So that's the way Krishna wants you to suffer, so that when you're thinking that there's nothing else but Krishna, that there's nothing, that he's my only shelter, when he really becomes your only shelter, when he really becomes everything for you, then that's when you get him, right? Yeah. So actually the whole point is that you can, Raghunath Das says, na dharmang shruti gana niruktam kila kuru. He says, don't worry about dharma, don't worry about adharma. But not worrying about adharma, if you said don't worry about adharma, don't worry about sin. Well, the devotee has no tendency to sin. Right. A real devotee has no time for sin, right? Avyartha kalatvam. He doesn't think, what am I going to do? I have no time for sin. I'm busy. I'm too busy. I got too many things to do. I have to finish my rounds, like with Haridas Thakur.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll gladly enjoy with you. No problem. Just just wait here till I'm finished.
Yes.
No time for sin.
Yeah.
So it's really that you have no time for sin, but at the same time you have no time for dharma either. For ordinary dharma. You have no time for like if someone comes to you and says, maybe like some things you'll do, you'll give some charity or something, or you'll participate in a group activity for the benefit of the community or whatever. So those things are all good. That's not a bad thing to do. Devotees should try a little bit to be part of the community. If you're going to be effective, if you want to spread Krishna consciousness, well, first of all, you have to be accepted as a part of the community. I was thinking about this because this is a big deal nowadays in the modern world right now. Like I was just listening to some people talking about this. I'm going off on a different subject, so I hope I'm not going to bore your listeners here. But in the 1950s, there was a book that came out which remarked, it was called Catholic Protestant Jew, right? And it was talking about the United States. And this was also at the same time there was another sociologist in America who talking about what he called civil religion, right? So by civil religion he meant like when the president in the United States is talking, then he always says, "God bless America." And I don't know if they do this in Argentina also, but they somehow, God bless America. There's certain things, certain rituals that are public rituals that are the politicians and ordinary people engage in, and that are not strictly speaking religious, right? But they may invoke God's name and so on. So he called that a civil religion. Mm-hmm. And so now civil religion, I don't know about your country or, my country, it's not, but in the United States, it's very, very strong. The idea that, especially conservative Americans, they have a very strong sense of, what it means to be American. And for them, their religion, for them to be religious means to be American, right? It's like if you're American, like if you say something, the flag is a symbol, you can't desecrate the flag. You can't, if the army is sacred, you can't desecrate the
Hallelujah.
soldiers. Yeah, so they have all these different things. There's all these, most of the rules are not written down, but people know the rules anyway, right? So this in the 50s, this man said that Protestants, Jews, and Catholics, they all follow the same civil religion, right? Whatever differences exist between the different religions, those are, subdued. You don't want to talk. I mean, the Protestants hated Catholics for so many years in America. Catholics were like blacks. You would have places. We don't want any Catholics coming here. We don't want any Catholics. We will not. In many places in the United States, a Catholic could not hold public office.
Wow.
So now, so a lot of those prejudices have gone away, and that was what happening in the post-war period in the USA, that you started to have this diminishing of, and this kind of the idea of the melting pot, that whether you're Protestant, we have religious independence, religious freedom, we can all be Americans. Doesn't matter if you're Protestant, doesn't matter if you're Jewish, doesn't matter if you're Catholic. So now, of course, as time goes by, you've got Muslims, right? Now you've got you've got Hindus coming to live in the United States. Now, can the Hindus and the Muslims also participate in the civil religion of the United States, right? Or is their religion opposed to it? Now, in actual fact, the other religions, in some ways, they are opposed. They're opposed to anything that compromises with their stated religious fundamentals. Right? Like, I mean, when the Catholics, for instance, they have the Pope, right? So they're supposed to have allegiance to the Pope. A Hindu is supposed to have allegiance to his guru. A Muslim is supposed to have allegiance to the Quran and to the Hadith and to the Sunnah, right? So the primary allegiance is somewhere else. So now, how are you going to accommodate those different differing religions and somehow or another get them to whitewash their differences and to subdue them for the national religion, for the civic religion, for the patriotic religion, like that? This is what is wanted. So at any rate, so these forces are always acting on any society. So in Krishna devotion, Krishna bhakti also. In the beginning, when we joined Krishna consciousness, and I'm talking about myself, I'm an old man now. Still got some energy left, a little bit of fire left, but when we joined, most of us were in the first generation. How old were we? There was nobody. Nearly everybody was like. I mean, I was 20 when I joined the Hare Krishna movement, and the oldest devotees were maybe like 25.
Wow.
The oldest people there were 25, 26 years old, and and they were already like old men. So it's not surprising that they all became, they had challenges that they couldn't stand up to.
Yeah.
Temptations that they couldn't
It makes
resist.
a lot of sense how it evolves everything after Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada left this world.
Yeah, well, it's all God's plan. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's about but what I'm just mean to say is that, of course, now hopefully we're older and wiser, and and now we can look back on it in a different way. But certainly when we were 20, when in my generation, people that became devotees, we were all believing that turn on, tune in, and drop out. Most of us were hippies before we became devotees. And so even I heard that Prabhupada once said that most of his work had already been done when he came, because everybody had already given up, the standard kind of dharma that was there in the West. I mean, don't kid yourself. The Western Dharma idea is quite strong, right? The Christians, Protestants, they have a very strong sense of Dharma, duty, family, all these things. They're very opposed to the kinds of the hippies were influenced by Marxism. They wanted to destroy everything. And still now you see what's happening in Western society. You have all this woke generation, right? And if you look back to the origins of all these different woke ideas, it all comes down to Marxism. That they're trying to destroy. They're actively trying to destroy the family. They want to destroy religion. They want to destroy the society that's there.
Mm.
Well, we were already, that's where we were in 1970 when I joined. I mean, I'd already lost all faith in capitalism and lost all faith in Western imperialism and all these things. We'd already come to that point. So if we hadn't done that, if we hadn't kind of gone through that revolution, we would never have come to Krishna consciousness. But now, if you look at the devotees, they're kind of embarrassed by that. Prabhupada was very strong. Prabhupada didn't compromise. Prabhupada did, he called it, nirvishesha shunyavadi. Right? So the whole world, the Western world, is, rajas and tamagun. He didn't see any. He wasn't compromising with Western society. He said, we're rebelling against Western society. We want to overturn Western society. We want to create a new kind of society with religious basic principles.
Yeah.
So he didn't give any. I mean, he didn't give it. Obviously, I'm saying now, I'm speaking positively of Christianity. That Christianity, the idea of Dharma in Christianity is very strong. That you do. All the Christians were very much against us, and even now, the Christians are very much against Hinduism because they think that Hinduism, well, you know how it is with the Abrahamic religions. They're very non-compromising in their basic belief that paganism leads to hell. We're all from that. The Hare Krishna is our creation of Satan. They're pagans, right? They belong to a world. This is why Christians and Muslims, and they want to devour India. They want to destroy India. They want to turn out India into a Muslim and Christian country.
In my first visit to Sweden, many years ago, I had the chance to go to visit one of the oldest Christian church in the world, Europe. And when I came inside this church, it was incredible, like mind-blowing image and design art, and how Jesus was portrayed as the center, like the master, and the apostles were around him. And the image of Jesus and the apostles were exactly as the zodiac wheel, the sun and the planets around. And many of the paintings they are inside that church were showing how Christians were thinking and the Christian cosmovision from back in time, and it was absolutely full of paganism. It was rune symbols everywhere next to the cross, and looks like, for what you can see, well, sorry, tell a little bit about this and how they get into Europe. Looks like the Christianism came and adopted many of the paganist beliefs and changed the names, and they put it on their side, so people can kind of relate and to follow on that way. So
they're doing even. So you can see even you see this
of the idea is paganism still.
Well, that's when you take something. There's nothing original, really, right? That there's something. What things? I mean, this is what the historians of religion are doing. They're trying to find out what are the incremental differences, and of course, that everybody wants to point out their differences. So you're like a Catholic or a Protestant will explain to you differently why Christianity is different from paganism. And actually, Protestantism is the one that the Protestants are the ones who want to go further than the Catholics, let's say, in divorcing themselves from the pagan traditions. It's a bit interesting. I'll just give you a parallel here. What happened in India? Okay, so in India, you say that conversion doesn't happen all at once. Conversion takes generations. Right? So the first people who converted to Islam in India, they were just like ordinary villagers. So there was very little difference between those Muslim villagers and the Hindu villagers. They were still doing some of the same things. They were still going to, let's say, the same holy place and making some offering. Maybe they would do some things that were a little bit different, but most often the Muslims came from the lower castes anyway. So they were, they would have been eating meat before, they're still eating meat, this kind of thing. But what happens is that once they've taken on the identification of Muslim, then what happens is that some priest will come in from outside and they'll say, yes, but you're not doing it right. You're doing this part, that's okay, but now you have to do more. You have to follow more of the law. You have to form more of the, you have to stop doing these things here. These are all pagan activities. And so as time goes by, they become more fundamentalist. It's not that they because of the way that they converted. They didn't convert out of true belief. They didn't convert out of knowledge. They might have converted out of fear, or they might have converted like Arto Jigyasu Artarthi Gyanicha Bharatarshapa. So there might be someone who is Arto, somebody suffering, someone's holding a sword to his throat and saying, convert or die, right? Or if someone else is going Artarthi, he's thinking, well, if I what the Muslims did, they made a tax called jizya. So anybody who was not jizya. Anyway, the non-Muslims had to pay an extra tax. So if you convert, I don't have to pay my taxes, right? So it may be a good idea. You don't have to do that. And so there were many different motivations for changing your religion in name, but to actually become a true believer, to become a sword-carrying jihadi,
Yeah.
that would maybe take a little bit longer. But now you see that with increased money coming into India from the Saudi Arabia and from other rich Arabic countries, they're producing schools, and the kids are being brought up and indoctrinated from childhood. So now the whole temperament of Muslims in South Asia, in Pakistan and so on, has become much more hardcore, become much more militant. So this is the kind of thing that happens over time. It happens in Christianity as well. The first Christian conversion, not such a big deal, but once they've taken the name of Christian, then they become, then there can be conditions to get more stronger feeling.
Right. Jagadananda,
But I mean, the point about what I'm saying, just about
parallel between the duties of Muslim Christians and Vedic Dharma, because in some point I get the idea that you see like a parallel between them, and it seems like quite evident that is, of course, everybody who's following God is doing Dharma, but in the other hand, maybe it's different.
How do you mean?
I mean, for example, what we can see as a Vedic Dharma, the offerings to the devatas, this and that will be taken as a paganism. So on that way, followers of the Vedas, to say, or the new followers of the Vedas, because our philosophy has something about Vedic tradition, but it's not 100%. So this new era of Vedic tradition, to say, and offering and everything will fell into the idea of paganism. So on that way, my Dharma can be paganism for others. So how I can see that the others in their beliefs are doing Dharma, maybe Dharma means something different.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, so just compare to if you think of Christianity, if you think of Vaishnavism, right? So we talk about Mayavad, right? And we talk about Bahudeva Devi Vad. And so we're against it. Now Pujivo Deva Devi, Devi Deva, right? Narottam Das. This is a big part of the early Vaishnavis. It's one of the reasons, even now, ISKCON, I mean, I hear preaching by ordinary Hindus, Bengali Hindus, because Bengali Hindus, they worship goddess, right? They worship Durga and Kali.
Yes.
So the Vaishnavas are not so keen on Durga and Kali. They might give a little bit of space to Shiva, but Durga and Kali, mostly they're not so keen. But so the regular Hindus, they're quite shocked. They think that Vaishnavas are not real Hindus, right? They think Vaishnavas are not real Hindus because they're not open in their belief that that all paths lead to God, right? That that Jatamat Tatapat, this is Prabhupada used to speak very strongly against the Ramakrishna mission and against Vivekananda and Ramakrishna.
And the
because they,
about also. Yeah.
what?
Also about Hinduism and worshipping demigods and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So in a sense, you could say that Vaishnava. So this was actually, I remember because I brought this up before. There was in the very early days of ISKCON. There was quite a big. I think he was at UCLA. He was maybe at UCLA or at Berkeley, at California University anyway, but maybe Stanford. But what's his name again? Anyway, a German. Anyway, he was had a German name. He was, but he's a very famous scholar on Veda and Veda Yagya and all this kind of thing. And he actually, when they first put an article in the Los Angeles Times about ISKCON, about Prabhupada, then he wrote a letter or wrote an article, and he said that why are these people becoming Vaishnavas, becoming theists, and worshiping a personal God, not worshiping Brahman? He said really that the Vedic system, the Vedic and the Upanishadic system, is really Jnanamarg, and it's really about liberation, and it's about Brahma, seeing the God as pantheistically or as monistic.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so Prabhupada wrote back many articles, and it was published as a little book. Prabhupada wrote letters to the editor, and there was actually some back and forth between them because he was quoting the Vedic literature to show that Prabhupada was wrong, and Prabhupada was quoting Bhagavad Gita and so on to show that this is actually this is the same. So that scholar, that German scholar, his actual point was that you are all Christians before, and you rejected Christians, you rejected theism, and you became Buddhists and you became Hindus, and now you've come back and you're taking a theistic religion, which is just as narrow and fundamentalist as Christianity. So what's your point? What you seem to be missing the point.
Uh-huh.
So there's a lot of people who think like that. They think the Vaishnavas. So sometimes you have the Vaishnavas who are saying we're not Hindu, right? Because the Hindus are saying like that, but we don't believe that. We believe we're more like Christians. We're more like Muslims. We say that our way or the highway. You go to it's either Krishna or nobody. Mamekam sharanam vraja. Mamekam. No choices here. Ananyas chintayanto mam. Right? You have to be exclusive. Aitukya pratihata. Right? This is the Vaishnava position.
Yes.
So the Mayavadi will answer, well, yes, you're right. You do like you do, and we'll do like we do, and you'll get the fruit, because by bhakti you'll attain liberation, no problem. But what you'll understand when you come to the end is that you and God are one, right? You'll become one with God in love. And one with God in love is being one with God. It's being, achieving that unity that we're all looking for. So that's for the Hindu, for the real Hindu, that's the goal. And that if you can do it through Islam or do it through Christianity, they have no objection. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, they would say, the traditional Hindu would say, that you must keep your own religion. Shreyan swadharmo viguna, paradharmat svanushtita. Paradharmo bhayava, swadharme nidanang sreya, paradharmo bhayava. Better you should do your own religion than somebody else's religion. Even if you make a mess out of what your own duty is, better you should do that than try to do somebody else's religion, because you'll never be able to do it. You can never do it.
Bhagavad Gita also on this concept.
This is chapter 7. Is it? Yes, Sreyan Swadharma. No, chapter 3.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 3. It's not just 38 or something like that. Just before Kama, the section about Kama.
Yes. So interesting. And from here, I would like to continue on the next session, speaking about this same topic that is so interesting about Hinduism and Vaishnavism as Gaudiya Vaishnavism.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would like to talk about that, because I think that I think that what's happened is that, for instance, that I'm not going to find out the name of the Sanskrit scholar, very famous scholar.
Yes, please get it
But
because I
but
want to read that. And just one question about this: did those letters get somewhere between Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and this scholar?
they
Did
were all published in the newspaper.
get some result or what it was?
Oh, what result do you expect?
Wow,
No. It's like
interesting.
most propaganda is internal propaganda. Yeah. So
Uh,
I mean, the Prabhupada's arguments were circulated. Prabhupada wanted his devotees. Prabhupada wanted his disciples to read that and to know his arguments. So yeah, that's still it must be. I don't know if it's ever been republished again though, but it was around in the very beginning when I joined the movement. It was just a small paper pamphlet. It was not a major publication.
interesting.
But but the thing about that is of course that you're that Vaishnavism, that we are also Hindus, right? So we're kind of in a middle position here.
Are
We
we?
kind of have our feet. We have kind of in both positions. But that's why also Hindus can see that Christians and Muslims are also doing the same thing. That they're also a part of Sanatan Dharma, right? Because it's Sanatan Dharma. So when we say Sanatan Dharma, we mean something that's a natural tendency of everyone to do it. It's a Jaiva Dharma. There's a Sanatan Dharma or Jaiva Dharma really means the same thing. So it's not that Christians or Muslims are acting in a way that goes outside of human psychology. It's not that they were completely original. They were, let's say, it's a historical development in Sanatan Dharma, but you can't go outside of Sanatan Dharma any more than you can go outside of Brahman. And there's nothing outside of Krishna. Everything is within Krishna. So how can you go without Krishna? So whatever happens in human history, whatever happens in human psychology, it's true to humanity. So this is why devotees often mistake and think that they're sui generis, that Krishna consciousness is something so special that the same rules don't apply. But it's not true. Right? The same rules apply. So you see the same kind of things going on, the same kinds of politics and the same kind of envy and the same kind of ambition and the same kind of pratishtasha and all these things. These are all human tendencies,
Right.
and so they're all going to be present. Why do you think that ISKCON or any other religious movement will somehow or another be free of it? What happens is that in the early days when you first join, you become so imbued with the spirit, right? You become I'm just I've been saved, and so now I've gotten something so special that none of the sins that have befallen Islam or befallen Catholicism or Protestantism or any other religion, that could never happen to us.
Yes.
And then we do almost exactly the same things as though we were following the playbook.
Yeah. Yes. It's interesting because this has been one of the biggest topic of the so-called. I know the word in Spanish. In English, it's like gloopers. It's one slang of devotees who fell down.
Bloopers.
Bloopers.
Blooper.
Bloopers.
What are you calling in Spanish?
No, in Spanish it's glooper. Glooper.
Glooper.
Because I asked one day why is this word glooper, and the response was that Bhaktivedanta Swami once say that those devotees who fell down is like when you throw a stone to a lake, and the sound is bloop.
Yeah, okay.
So it's glooper. Well, anyways, their main point that they say that the mantra and the process does not work. They say I chant Hare Krishna mantra and did Kirtan and everything, vegetarian for 10, 20 years, and my heart is still dark, and I have the same desire, even if not more desires than before, and my life is total chaos. So many argue that the things doesn't work because you see this kind of behaves and how devotees are
Yeah, well,
behaving.
it takes. Yeah, well, I agree. I mean, we would like things to happen automatically, right? So I took the
Yeah.
holy name. Now let the holy name do everything.
Yeah.
but it doesn't work quite like that. You have to the willpower of the individual is also involved. I mean, there are many people who don't believe in individual will, right? They don't believe that in free will, and so you think that and the Gita sometimes seems to say that like that, that prakrite kriyamanani gunaih karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimurhatma kartaham iti manyate ishvarak sarvabhuteshu. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hrideshe arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarvabhutani yantra rudhani maya. So we're all like we're on a machine, it's going round and round and round like a Ferris wheel.
Yes.
And it never stops. We can't get off, right? So that's or that material nature is pushing us to activities, and we're helplessly behaving in ways according to our conditioning, and we can never be free from it. So it sometimes seems like there's no free will, but if there's no free will, then bhakti has no meaning, right? So the question of the two kinds of free will. You want to give up responsibility for your own decisions. You don't want to make that decision. You don't want that discipline that I'm going to follow. I'm going to give my life to Krishna, and now I must be worthy of Krishna. I must be suitable for entering into the Dham. So obviously, the Dham is not a place for people who are whimsical and for people who are irresponsible. It's a place where you go to, where love is natural, but natural love still requires you to take decisions, right? I may love my wife with all my heart, but if she's being run over or being attacked by a bear in the woods, I might not try to save her in order to keep my own life safe, right? Understand? So
Yes.
so the active decision, you still may act in ways that are apparently not appropriate.
Yeah.
If you still have to take decisions. You still have it's the proof of your love is that you take the right decisions that are in line with love,
Correct.
not
There
against love.
in Bhagavad Gita also is interesting when Krishna is explaining to Arjuna that all that army is dead already. This I decide. You just must to act in somehow. In somehow also, yes, it's clear that it's some kind of destiny that is done for everyone. That you just must to do your job, and that's it. In that way, also Prem Bhakti maybe comes when Krishna decided that this Atma is coming here and doing this seva now. It's not anymore doing seva over there or acting in the material world, but maybe it's doing here. It's both sides are possible to take. Of course, I subscribe and decide that we have free will and we can decide really what.
Yeah, I always say in this case, I mean, because I had arguments with many people. I had one time that I actually got into a long period of back and forth with one devotee who was he was a non-free will absolutist. So he was almost saying, he was almost taking the position that but even if you're God, right, playing human being, right? Because let's say that Krishna is God, but he's playing at being a human being. And so sometimes we see that Krishna forgets or that Krishna becomes bewildered, like in this. So there are stories like this in the Bhagavatam, for instance. The example is given that Vasudeva, that Salva, that presented an illusory Vasudeva and chopped off his head in front of Krishna on the battlefield. And so for a moment, Krishna was bewildered and thought that it was actually Vasudeva that had been killed by Salva, right? And so they take that. But was he really bewildered or was he not bewildered? Or a better example is Krishna when he's playing the Leela of Damodar and he's afraid. So Krishna is afraid of his mother. So now how can Krishna be afraid of his mother when death, when Yamaraj is afraid of Krishna? Yad bibheti swayang bhayam, right? God, the God of fear. Yamaraj, he himself is afraid of Krishna, but there Krishna is afraid that his mother is angry with him because he broke the pots. So now is that real? So the debate there is it real anger or is it not real anger? Right? Is he really afraid or is he not afraid?
Well, of
Well,
course,
now,
he's afraid for the sake of the lila, and he decided to live this lila like this.
okay. Well, now you're going to okay. So now you're starting to see the problem, right? So the problem is that he's being afraid for the leader. Is he really afraid or not afraid? And if he's God, how can he be afraid? Right. So then we say yoga maya. We say that that he accepts illusion for the sake of the lila. Why? What is the need of because we were talking last time about rasa, right?
Yes.
And if you don't have if like fear is one of the rasas, like anger is one of the rasas.
There is no fear, there will not be mother of Krishna. So this is the
right. Well, so that. All right, but I mean, it gives her the possibility to act in certain ways, right? That are indicative of love. So she has to chastise her child because that's the way she shows her love, right?
Yes.
Or if the child doesn't want to eat, but you make it eat anyway, right? Because it's the way you show your love.
Correct.
So you sometimes you do something that is so that there's talk about this. You can it's in the Anukulyena Krishnanushilanam. You know this verse in the Bhakti Rasamrita that says that Anukulyena Krishnanushilanam. So why is the word Anukulyena there? So Anukulyena. So then it gives the example of Mother Yashoda. She went and took the pot of the milk off the stove. Right? When Krishna didn't want it, Krishna wanted her to keep on drinking from her breast. But she left him anyway. So now is she being anukul or not being anukul? Right? Is she being favorable? Is she doing favorable service or not favorable service? Well, they have to defend Mother Yashoda. She's doing favorable service, but somehow or another it's not pleasing to Krishna. Right? And then on the other hand, you can be doing something that could be the opposite. Right? It could be unfavorable, like like Jaya and Vijaya coming and fighting with Krishna, doing things like this, but he's getting pleased by that, right?
Yes.
So it externally appears to be pratikul, but in actual fact it's anukul.
Right? It's just like Kamsa. Big disturb for humankind, but indeed is Krishna's lila, is having fun with them.
Yeah. So the point now. So now, how does that apply to us as ordinary living beings? So now we are. Whether we are independent souls or whatever we are, we're still also going through something. We're going through conditioned life in the way that Krishna is going through conditioned life, except we don't have his potency or have his wisdom. Right? But nevertheless, we're experiencing in a small way the same things. So in the same way, so Krishna also has to make choices, right? Krishna has to decide. Sometimes he's disagreeing. Balaram is disagreeing, right? They're going the battle. Balaram runs away, doesn't want to fight. He decides to go on pilgrimage instead of going to the battle of Kurukshetra.
Right. Yeah.
So sometimes even Krishna and Balaram are disagreeing with each other, even though they're supposedly same Godhead.
Yeah.
So the thing is that without free will, you really can't have a lila.
Exactly. Yes.
So even if you say that Yoga Maya or Krishna is organizing everything, there's something that's being left to chance, and something that's.
Since we jump to the lila area, that honestly for me is much more sweet than speaking about Dharma, and I would like to ask you something very personal. Still is on video, but there are different opinions in terms of lila and in terms of the Bauma Brindavan. Some seems to think and believe that Bauma Brindavan is the eternal Brindavan that we must to get in, the Nitya. But others has an idea similar to the Nitya Vihar, where is a transcendental area place where not Nanda Maharaj, Yashoda, they do not exist there because Krishna is never born in that place. Krishna is always there with Radha. There is no Svaikiya and all these material regulations or what is correct or not. They are always eternal, and there is only the Mahapurush Krishna, and there are not the husband of the gopis. So no, everybody is It's only Krishna and the gopis, no gopas either.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you can take that to the extreme. Right, so what's the extreme? The extreme is that Radha and Krishna are making love all the time. But Radha and Krishna never stop making love. They're always in ecstasy of lovemaking. None of the other Sakis don't even need them. We don't. The kunja, they forget the kunja. They're not in. They're totally absorbed in each other. Right? So that's you're taking. So that's almost like Brahma again. It's almost like Brahma again, because there's no, in that sense, in when you look in Ujjwala Nilamani, the description of Mahabhav. Right? This is Viduya Bheda Brahma, Bheda Brahmam. So that that washed away completely any distinction of identity between Radha and Krishna. Their separation is completely destroyed by the Mahabhav.
Yes.
So this is the was it Nirdhuta Bheda Brahmam. So that's almost like Brahma again, right? Right, so that you become that you. This is also I was talking last week about rasa, but we didn't. I was a bit hard to get everything all together. But if you took a look at the definition of rasa, it says in the earlier tradition, it's saying that when you experience rasa, then everything else is gone. The only thing you somehow you lose any sense of even yourself. You're just the emotion carries you away, and for a moment there, or for maybe even a lengthy moment, your heart melts, your brain melts, right, and you're experiencing some kind of emotion, but is in a detached way. You're transcending your own identity as whoever you are. If I'm watching a film and I'm watching the film and getting all excited and getting all involved and watching, and I'm seeing the actors and seeing the situation and seeing the problems and seeing and getting all, involved in identifying. And then when the denouement comes of the film, when you come to the conclusion, then you've completely, by this time now, you've completely forgotten, here I am, Jagadananda, in this body. You forget, you've forgotten that you're completely involved in what's happening there. Yeah. And then the emotion that you feel is detached from, it's a universal. It becomes a universal thing. Yeah. That's why this is why they call it, that they say that the experience of rasa, even before Gaudiya Vaishnavism, they're saying that the experience of rasa is like the twin brother of Brahma Sakshatkar, of experiencing Brahma Bhava Sahodara. We call it Sahodara. Sahodara means twin brother. From the same womb. It comes from the same place. What's that same place? That same place is universal identity, that we're all one, that we all belong to the Supreme. We all belong to one undivisible whole. We're not separate from it. So now whether we see that within that whole, whether we see a transcendent Supreme Person as having significant, you can look at that supreme whole either as Achintya Bheda Bhed, or as Kevala Dvaita, or as Vishishta Dvaita. You can look at it. You can look at Brahman in different ways. Yes. But no matter how you look at Brahman is Ekam Eva Advitiyam. And also Tat Tvam Asi, you are that. So hum, I am that. Right? That you are that Tattvamasi. Those things are going to continue to be true. You don't refute the Upanishads because you want to talk about bhakti.